From the 1980s through the turn of the millennium, the Moore Gallery was the best art gallery in Philadelphia. I had a teaching job a block away at a now defunct art school and would take my students over there to see the consistently incredible exhibitions. And I'd always grab the show card, take it home, and throw it into a box. Eventually, I bought a painting, and the gallery started mailing me the cards. I began making videos about artists in 2009, years after the Moore Gallery closed. But as I look through my pile of cards, I feel compelled to share my memories of a place that so deeply affected my visual imagination. Nowadays, I can go to a gallery show that excites me, take high-res digital photos and videos, and more or less immortalize it on my YouTube channel. But sadly, that was not the case during the glory days of the Moore Gallery. When a show ended, it ended. On the other hand, I have gotten to know several Moore Gallery alumni and filmed some of them in more recent times. This movie is my take on the gallery. It's not going to be either a history of the gallery or an exhaustive look at every artist who ever had work there. But I will try to show you why some of these artists are so special to me and how they impacted my video career. In the late 1970s, figurative art was starting to make a comeback. In 1979, a group of young artists organized a show called People, Places, and Things at a federal courthouse in Philadelphia. Charles Moore, who had studied at the University of the Arts and was working at the Gross McLeaf Gallery, was intrigued by the courthouse show. And when, in the early 80s, he began running his own gallery, some of those courthouse artists became the nucleus of his stable. First among these were the two Franks, both of whom I admire greatly for their willingness to reinvent themselves. I remember vividly the heart-stopping beauty of Frank Heider's 1986 show. The pieces were described as mixed media on carved wood panel and were a logical extension of a series of woodblock prints he had made. I have been friends with Frank Heider for many years. He is relentlessly creative and has done all sorts of things over his long career. In his recent Janus project, he took his painted inflatable sculpture all over the world, installed it in various venues, and documented it in photographs and watercolors. Because he was smart enough to praise my early videos, I have made 12 about him so far. He also got me to film an alumni show of his art school, MICA, the Maryland Institute College of Art, which hooked me up with a whole host of other artists to document. Frank and his wife Helen ran Projects Gallery for a while, and that presented me with yet more subjects. I cannot thank him enough for the encouragement and positive impact he has had on my video career. Frank Galuska has also worked in many different styles over the years. I remember especially some of the shows he had at Moore in the 1990s before he left to take a teaching job in California. His art is incredibly rich in texture as well as ideas. Frank Galuska is a true intellectual. He wrote me an email that explains something of the culture of the Moore Gallery. He wrote, "One of the most remarkable things is the faith that Chuck Moore had in his artists. He supported what they were doing no matter how experimental it was. Creativity was always welcome. In their shows, each artist was making a comment or critique in their shifts of subject and style about what every other artist in the gallery was doing. This caused much of the work to cohere into a common feeling that was not exactly expressed by any individual artist in the gallery, but held all these artists together. Frank also told me that Chuck Moore was interested in art that was ambitious, original, expressive, and figurative, that it suggested a story but did not illustrate an existing story. Chuck liked artists to acknowledge and celebrate historical precedents, often combining them in ways that did not undermine the originality of the work. Chuck was drawn not to the ironic, but to the elegiac. He did not flinch at sad or depressive paintings if these were genuinely and personally felt. Frank has helped me enormously on films about Moore Gallery artists Scott Noel and Martha Erlbacher, as well as one about his Tyler professor, Roger Anlaker. A number of the Moore Gallery artists were interested in narrative painting. Two of the best rooted their dramatic imagery in the here and now. In the 1970s and 80s, we PAFA students thought Sidney Goodman was God. Incredibly cool, but down to earth, Sidney inspired us with his painterly and highly imaginative evocations of American life. Educated at the University of the Arts, Sidney was less hung up about academic notions of how to paint the figure than some of our other teachers. I only got one chance to make a movie about him when he was still alive, but sadly, he wasn't really up to talking about himself by that point. Sidney was the mentor to some of the best figurative artists to emerge from that time. Edgar Gerrans and Vincent Desiderio are two examples. A third is Bo Bartlett, who also showed at the Moore Gallery. Bo and I were classmates at the Pennsylvania Academy. He has gone on to be one of the most successful figurative artists in the country. He is also a filmmaker, and his paintings have always been like enigmatic film stills. This painting was inspired by the scene when Gregory Peck shoots the mad dog in To Kill a Mockingbird. I've made 3 films about Bo. In the first one, he wrote me a detailed email about his life growing up in Georgia. I read his words and illustrated the text with paintings he had made over the years. Bo has founded the Bo Bartlett Center in his hometown of Columbus, Georgia, not only as a showcase for his art, but as a civic, educational, and cultural resource for his community. One of Bo's biggest influences is Norman Rockwell, and he made a painting about a charm school for kids. In my movie Bo Bartlett at Home in America, I filmed my granddaughter walking around balancing a book on her head like the characters in Bo's painting. A few weeks later, a truly magical surprise arrived in the mail. Thanks, Bo. Other narrative painters at Moore set melancholy allegories into a timeless world. Martha Erlbacher was an abstract painter. She and her husband Walter decided to teach themselves to work like the Renaissance masters. I never had the pleasure of meeting her, but saw her shows at Moore. She was a very influential teacher at the University of the Arts. Last year, I made a posthumous movie about her. She was a great still life painter as well. Of all her figure paintings, her Cycle of Life series may be my favorite. Two other artists who had a Moore Gallery connection were very close to Martha. Bonnie Sklarski had at least 2 one-person shows at the gallery. Noah Buchanan studied with Martha. His work appeared in group shows at Moore in 2002 and 2003. Anthony Apezos is another Academy graduate. It's a good thing Chuck Moore did not mind depressive paintings because Anthony excelled in that genre despite his upbeat and funny disposition. In recent years, he has added dinosaur bones as a subject. And he has created a magnificent series of landscapes of Harvard's Arnold Arboretum across the street from his home. In my film about him, I told him how moving these landscapes were to me and how they look like a good and peaceful place to die. Which, of course, made him laugh. I often found myself laughing while looking at work at the Moore Gallery. 2 artists that routinely tickled my funny bone used themselves as subject matter. Tina Newberry is very funny, and with incredible skill, she documents her eccentric inner life and fantasies. I loved her shows at Moore and went on to make 2 movies about her later shows at the Schmidt-Dean Gallery. Tina gets obsessed with everything from history to pop culture, and then inserts herself into these worlds. She has an extraordinary imagination. Here, she becomes a character on Seinfeld, plus a stand-in for Gregory Peck in the movie version of Moby Dick. Here, she fantasizes about being a soldier in the Civil War. And there's a real poignancy sometimes lurking behind the humor. In this painting, she imagines that maybe she could have prevented Lincoln's assassination. Sarah McEnany, like Bo Bartlett, was also a classmate of mine at the Pennsylvania Academy. She has been making diaristic paintings since her school days and has become very successful. I have never had the opportunity to make a movie about her, and the images, other than the ones from the Moore Art Gallery cards, are from the Locks Gallery. I particularly love her paintings that include various animal companions. In a 2015 interview, Sarah said, quote, "My paintings are totally and purposefully autobiographical, but are also edited, embellished, and fantasized. It is not true documentary in any way. I've made work about traumatic events in my life, but there are also things that are private that I don't paint. Even when I am doing a landscape or cityscape, the paintings are autobiographical. An anecdote or story is the impetus to make the painting. But I like to think that people read into the work the way they want, that they can enter and even change the story to suit them. 4 of Philadelphia's finest artists happen to be close friends. Each has a unique vision and innovative technical approach to her medium. I am happy to have also made films about sculptor extraordinaire Susan Hagen and stained glass genius Judith Schechter. I remember Chuck Moore using the word chops to characterize an artist with great skills, and his gallery featured a number of extraordinary figure painters who were wizards with the brush. Ben Kamahira was one of my teachers at the Pennsylvania Academy. Influenced by Velázquez and Edwin Dickinson, he was known for dreamily erotic and highly atmospheric paintings of nudes. I made a movie about a show of artists that paint the nude that featured some of Ben's work. Of all the hundreds and hundreds of paintings I saw over the years at the Moore Gallery, this is the one that most sticks in my mind. It's called Bleachers, and I made a movie in which Randall Exon talked about how he made it. Randy is a superb artist who now shows at Herschel and Adler in New York. He's best known for his landscapes, sometimes with figures. He often visits Ireland and captures the raw beauty of the place. He told me 2 things I've never forgotten. One is that beauty and its meaning is much more complex and profound than most people realize. He also told me that his favorite part of being an artist is getting to participate in the community of artists. I've made 3 films about him. He also invited me to accompany him and his Swarthmore students on a visit to meet and film the legendary Robert Venturi. Without Randy, I could never have hoped to get both great life advice and the finger from one of the world's greatest architects. Thanks, Randy. If Randy's community of artists were to vote for mayor, Scott Noel would likely be a shoo-in. Scott is a fantastic artist with an exquisite sense of color, great paint handling skills, and a poetic sensibility. He also teaches at the Pennsylvania Academy and has organized, curated, and promoted many shows of artists who paint directly from life. I've made a bunch of movies about him. The first one went viral and has had over 2 million views. I've also made movies about some of the shows he's put together, as well as artists that he's introduced me to. His importance to anyone interested in working from direct observation cannot be overstated. One of Scott's closest friends also showed at the Moore Gallery. Phil Geiger got his MFA from Yale and then taught for decades at the University of Virginia. Like Scott, he is an adherent of perceptual painting, and he's been one of the best at it for his entire career. Elaine Wilson has been friends with Scott and Phil since their college days. In the decades following her 2 solo shows at Moore Gallery, Elaine has painted the landscapes of the places where she has lived, which include Washington, D.C. and Michigan. Susan Moore's painterly portraits have continued to evolve since her days showing at the Moore Gallery. She uses a variety of media, including oil paint, oil pastels, and collage. I got these images from her website, which is well worth visiting. Right around the turn of the millennium, 2 Tyler School of Art professors had shows at Moore Gallery. About a decade later, they both also had shows at the Rosenfeld Gallery, where I made films about them. Charles Schmidt's Moore exhibition featured figures, some of which were posed on very reflective sheets of mylar. A few alluded to biblical stories of Adam and Eve. And he also showed some still lifes. His 2011 show at Rosenfeld was entirely still life paintings. Like Frank Galuska, Charles Schmidt was incredibly helpful to me in the making of my film about his colleague Roger Anliker. I missed Dan Dahlman's one-person show at Moore Gallery and don't have a card for it, but one of his paintings was featured in a group show of that year. He told me that this image was inadvertently reversed on the card, so here's what it should have looked like. Dan's show at Rosenfeld featured self-portraits. Here are some other recent paintings by this wonderful artist. When the pandemic eventually ends, I'm hoping to make a movie about Dan's entire career. Some Moore alumni work representationally, but are less traditionally realistic. I always looked forward to John Opie's shows, but I didn't meet him until the winter of 2016, when I drove out to Quakertown to film him as he and his wife were getting ready to move to Portland, Oregon. His work is beautiful, often whimsical, and filled with luminous color and paint handling. I cannot tell you how much I value the aesthetic freedom that always emanates from his art. The first paintings I saw of his at Moore were of people swimming at night. He also created images of musicians. He often inserted overlarge figures into a landscape. His imagination is terrific. I love these paintings of a kind of Mount Rushmore Elvis. Susan Opie, John's partner for well over half a century, is a gifted sculptor who also showed at Moore Gallery. This is John's painting of his good friend Paul George's. I never met Mr. George's, but fondly remember seeing his work at the Moore Gallery. Perky Edgerton is another amazing Moore Gallery alum. In 2013, I made a couple movies about a show she had at Gross McLeaf. Perky draws from all sorts of influences to create her pictures. This work, called The Cocktail Party, was influenced by the color tonalities of Chinese painting, as well as the way that the artist Balthus would geometricize his figures. She painted this from a black and white snapshot of a party that her parents attended before she was born. She improvised all the colors in a manner intended to flatten the space. Nothing wrong with a figure painter who's unafraid of a little modernism. I love everything about her work. The drawing, color, paint quality, and of course her wonderful visual imagination. Her husband Brian Munier is a sculptor, and I also made a movie about him back in 2009. Though his tastes ran more towards representation, Chuck Moore also did show abstract artists. Leonard Nelson was much older than most of the Moore artists and was a pioneer of color field painting. He taught at Moore College for 30 years. His estate is handled by the Findlay Galleries, and these examples of his work come from their website. Though I never met him, I did make movies about two younger color field artists who were influenced by him, Stephen Estock and Murray Desner. The colors in Diane Pieri's work tended to be dark back when she was showing at Moore Gallery. I met her some years later at the Rosenfeld Gallery and have made 3 movies about her. I asked her what made her brighten up her palette, and she said that as she's gotten older, she's become happier and let go of a lot of things. Diane has visited India and other Asian countries where very bright colors are the rule. In one of my all-time favorite artist quotes, she told me, quote, "I am free to be as decorative and concerned with beauty as I want to be." More power to you, Diane. Because what is the point of art if not to give us pleasure and add meaning to our lives? The Moore Gallery was filled with artists that enriched my life. I am deeply grateful to Chuck Moore and all the artists at the Moore Gallery. Some were already friends of mine back when they showed with Chuck. Some I met years later. And some I never knew. I want to end this movie with a plea. I am incredibly proud that I got to make a movie about John Opie, who is in his 80s. The artist James McGarrell, who died a few years ago at 90, had 2 extraordinary shows at Moore that I wish I could have made movies about. He was a great artist, but it's hard to find high-resolution pictures of his work. His own old-school website is pathetic compared to almost any art student these days, and he was very important. This is a screen capture from the Metropolitan Museum's website. The image of his painting is small, and the museum tells us two things. First, the painting is not on view at the museum. And second, due to rights restrictions, this image cannot be enlarged, viewed at full screen, or downloaded. So the Met is saying, you can't see this in person, and we're not even going to give you a decent digital image of it. Here's my plea. If you see a show and love the art of an older artist whose career was made before the internet, or even a younger artist who is a Luddite when it comes to things digital, document their work with your cell phone and reach out to me. I am always looking to make a movie about a good artist.